I'm ready. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr.
I know it's early. I
Flores.
know it's early. But thank you for being here. And of course, this is our first scheduled educational seminar. And our seminars have been coordinated by the Museum of Gaming History through our security, not security, he is a security guy, but through our educational director, Ted Whiting, who 3 days ago had to get on an airplane and go to Finland. So today he's supposed to be eating reindeer, that's what he told me. And he's gone all week. And so I'm standing in for Ted on the introductions for the seminars. And I believe most of you know me, Jim Follis. And Ted, of course, he's a security guy for MGM Resorts International. So that means he's in charge of all the surveillance stuff for worldwide for MGM. And he was kind enough to get us a layout at the end of today's seminar. The layout stays here, please.
How much is it worth?
Yes,
Can we bother sending you the chips off the layout?
the chips are generic, so, yeah, well, most of them are generic, but yeah, no harvesting, please. And not the cards. Are the cards Ari also? Probably. Anyway, I want to get started here by introducing this gentleman who is he knows how to cheat the casinos in real time. Not digitally, electronically, but hands-on kind of manipulation of stuff. And he is, and I don't want to read this verbatim, but he is an author of 2 books. One is American Roulette and the other is Dirty Poker. And I know I would not want him at my poker table. Okay. But without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Richard Marcus.
Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Speaking of Ted Whiting, back in the day, because there's going to be a lot of back in the days during this presentation, because everything I did that Jim just mentioned was back in the day. Because he said, I'm capable of cheating, but I'm X cheater. I don't do it anymore. Ted Whiting, back, let's say, in the mid-90s, was before he became the whole head of corporate surveillance at the MGM, he was the surveillance director at Brush. And he was already making a name for himself. A lot of people already knew of him, including us cheats. And I am particularly well known for this one particular cheating move, which a lot of people, including Ted Whiting, have called it the greatest cheating move ever in the history of casinos. And I designed this move to beat Ted Whiting. Okay, we had a little rivalry going. You know, he was the head surveillance honcho with all the equipment, you know, all the bubbles, all the, even then, you know, the equipment was somewhat advanced. And I was just like the little guy. I was like the David, right? And he was the big, strong monster in surveillance that I had to beat. So I did design that move, and you know, back then I never could have possibly dreamed that I would be associated with Ted Whiting in any sense of the word. You know, that I would actually be speaking at a conference that he organizes, and he actually is a supporter of. And I now today have a conference, an annual conference about surveillance and cheating and game protection. And Ted Whiting supports that, so like we're actually friends now. And so it's really hard to believe. But when he asked me to speak to you guys here, and he explained to me, you know, what it is. It's an association of collectibles, and you know, I understand it's not only chips, it's machines, equipment, matchbook covers. I mean, you know, wow, if I would have known about this 30, 40 years ago when I started, I had all these chips from all these casinos, I would be very rich, right? But you know, who would ever think that these chips here could possibly be worth money, like rare coins? So when Ted asked me about it, I said, well, you know, I'm an ex-casino cheat, and what I do now is I consult to casinos all around the world, teaching them game protection, how to protect their casinos from people like me, and people even that do stuff that I never did, like digital cheating, very advanced cheating. And I thought, well, what can I possibly talk about at a casino collectibles conference? Where would the connection be? And I was like wondering about this for, I got to do this because Ted asked me, but what am I going to talk about? And then it hit me. Wait a minute, doesn't casino cheating have a history? And what is the number one, let me ask you guys, what do you think the number one thing, object, is in all of casino cheating? Chips. Chips. And so, it's right in front of me. So, what I'm going to do, and the history of casino cheating is really very colorful, which you will soon see. So I'm going to talk about the history of the glorious or inglorious history of casino pass posting cheats. I'm going to talk about the history of that and how it evolved through, starting from the 50s up until now, and how it led to my invention of this move, which I'm going to show you on this table, called the Savannah roulette move. The reason why it's called Savannah is not because it has something to do with the state of Georgia. Savannah was a stripper in a nightclub 35 years ago or something when I thought of this move. So that's what we're going to do. Now, pass posting.
Late for school.
What would you guys think? I mean, most of you have some familiarity with casinos. You gamble, you play in casinos, correct? When you think about casino cheating, from day one in its history till now, what do you think is the most common way that people try to cheat? For instance, is it marking cards, right? Is it digital stuff now that we hear? Is it with cameras and that? Which is not, so I'll exclude that, okay? But what is the most common way that people try to cheat? Do they try to manipulate the equipment in the casino, like the cards or machines, or do they manipulate the chips? What would you guess?
And chips.
Of course. It's a Chips Collectibles Association, so not only does it have to be chips, it really is chips. The biggest way from day one.
Cheaters in this organization.
What was it?
You're saying chips, the chip collectors.
The chip. Right, that's the idea.
Cheaters and chip collectors.
They both have one thing in common. They want to get as many chips as possible, right? So it is cheating. The most common form of cheating has always been and always will be chip manipulation. Mainly people trying to bet after the outcome of the decision. That's called pass posting. Trying to increase their bet, put more chips on it. Or if they lose, before the dealer can take their losing bet, to steal the chips back. It's always about chips. In one shape, way, or form, except for the advanced digital cheating now that uses cameras, but they're still looking to get more chips. But it's always been about chips. Now, the term pass posting, it comes from, anybody can guess where that term comes from?
Horse racing.
Horse racing.
Horse racing. Yeah, very simple, though, because when they go to the post, that's where the start of the race is. And after the post, pass post, back in the 20s, this is when it really was well known. Bookmakers would arrange for bets to be made after the horses had already won, or was very late in the race and they were about to win. That's pass posting. And that is the most common form of cheating. It always was, it is now, and it always will be. So, with that, let's get into a little bit of the history. Okay, so that's a nice little sketch there. I'm not saying these people are cheats, but it looked good for the presentation, so that's why I picked it. Okay, now. Okay, so the definition of casino pass posting, like I said, it's just the art of placing a bet on winning outcome that has already been determined by cards, dice, roulette, balls, or any other instrument relative to gaming. Okay, and like I explained, it goes back to the days of horse racing. So, there is, believe it or not, there is a father of modern pass posting. And the way it happened, which this person's life, this man was called Mumbles. Okay? I do not know his real name, but he was given the moniker Mumbles. Can everybody see this, by the way? The print? Okay. He was given the name because unfortunately he had a tumor in his throat and they had to operate on it, and he lost his ability to speak without the mechanical voice box. But he just didn't want to be with a mechanical voice box, so he did without it. And he mumbled. He he spoke with difficulty, and there'll be more, I'll explain exactly why he was called Mumbles. It's not a mockery or anything like that. It's how he used his disadvantage or his disability to become the father of pass posting. So, how did Mumbles discover pass posting? Well, by the same way a lot of things are discovered, and that is by accident. By accident. He was, back in the 1950s, in the El San Juan Casino in Puerto Rico. He was at a craps table. Okay, everybody familiar with craps? And on that craps table, he was just watching the game. And let's make believe now that this is a craps layout, because we couldn't, I couldn't get all these layouts in here, it would be a little bit too much. So this is a pass line bet. These are all pass line bets, right? Going around the horn of the table, and it would continue through here. So he's standing by, watching the game, and the shooter made a winning point, or a 7 out, or a winner 7, or winner 11, and the dealer proceeded to pay. And when the dealer paid, okay. So there was a whole bunch of red $5 winning bets. So the dealer went out and started to pay him like this. Right, that's what it looks like. Now the guy who played this bet, he had a green chip underneath, right? He had $30 underneath, right? He had a green chip with a red chip on top, $30. But the dealer didn't see the green chip underneath, so the dealer just accidentally paid him $10 like all the other red bets, paid in red bets, right? And the person who made the bet, I mean, sir, what would you do if you bet $30 and you won the bet and the dealer gave you $10?
Hey, you only give me $10.
Yeah, you wouldn't say like, sir, no problem, I'll be the money, right? So the guy playing said, hey, wait a minute here. I bet $30 and you only gave me 10. So the dealer, he was surprised, right? Because they don't really make those kind of mistakes that often. And the dealer looked down and saw it and corrected the payoff. Went and paid correctly $30. So Mumbles was a horse player, by the way. He was a horse player, and he had a love of gambling, and he's thought about that, and he said, "Wow, wouldn't it be nice if I could make the dealers make that mistake?" That was the first idea he had. Wouldn't it be nice? So, he got to thinking, what if, and this is really like unbelievable, because if, sir, what is your name? James. James. Nice to meet you. What would you think if somebody said to you, I could bet like $20 on a hand of blackjack, and you win the hand, and the dealer pays you $20. after the dealer's paid you, you go ahead and you stick a $1,000 chip in your bet. And you said, hey, you paid me wrong. I bet $1,000. You paid me wrong. It's complete, cheating, a lie, right? After the dealer paid you and was finished, right? How many of you think that could really work? Not too many of you, right? All right, let me tell you, if that didn't work, I wouldn't be standing here right now. Okay, now, so Mumbles had the idea, what if I bet $10 on the pass line on the craps table? If it loses, fine, the dealer just takes it. If it wins, he just goes, he takes out his original 2 red chip bet, and he puts in its place a green and a red, and he puts it down, and he says to the dealer, hey, you paid me wrong. Because after all, when it really happened legitimately, that's exactly what happened. The dealer didn't see the green chip underneath. So Mumbles decided to recreate the situation and see if it worked. And lo and behold, the dealer said, oh, I'm sorry, and paid him. And that was the birth of pass posting. Okay? Pass posting. That incident in the 1950s in Puerto Rico was the birth of the modern cheating of pass posting. It still goes on in every casino, at every table in the world, every day. There's a lot of different versions of it. People try to add to their bets that were already there. That's called bet capping. That's something different. In other words, somebody has a $20 bet on a hand of blackjack and gets a 20 and sees the dealer's up card is a 7, so they have a good chance of winning, so they'll just add some more chips to that. That's called capping. That's different. Okay? Pass posting is changing the bet, or it usually entails either making a bet that there was nothing there, and then all of a sudden there's a winner, and the guy tries to pass post it right away before the dealer marks the number in roulette, or changes the bet. Because what Mumbles did is he changed the bet. There was $10 there, and after it won, he made it $30, right? He didn't drop extra chips on, he actually switched the bet, right? He just picked up one, put down the other, and he switched the bet, and he said, hey, you claim me wrong, and I want to get paid the $30, and he did. So, he decided to see how far he could go with this. Was he lucky? Did it just happen that one time? Would I get caught the second time, the third time? So he started to do it in Puerto Rico. There was other casinos there, and he started to get paid all the time. All the time. Because dealers were always trained, and still are trained to this day, that people try to do this kind of cheating before the outcome of the bet. But this was something new. Actually wait for the dealer to pay the bet legitimately, and then go in and switch the bet and say, you paid me wrong. Okay? That, I then took that to the next, it became an evolution. When I got into the cheating business, I finished by doing the same exact cheating move that Mumbles did on blackjack tables, but instead of $5 chips, right? My original bet would be 3. I would sit at a high rollers table. My original bet would be, say, $300, 3 black chips, and underneath, in my hand, I would have 2 $5,000 chips with a $100 chip on top. And when the dealer paid $300 on a winning hand of blackjack, I would switch in 10,100 to the table maximum. And I had a little help because behind my bet, underneath my elbow, underneath my wrist, I had a whole bunch of $5,000 chips called backup chips to make it credible. So when I would claim, hey, you paid me wrong, and now I'm claiming $10,000 with I have about $30,000 or $40,000 in $5,000 chips behind it to give it credibility. Now, how many of you think out of say out of 100 times I did that in all these top-notch casinos in Las Vegas. Back then it was Caesars, the Desert Inn, the MGM, the Las Vegas Hilton. How many times could that work out of 100?
100 times it could work.
The answer is 99. Okay? I don't want to get too much into my personal history, but I took that $5 thing, that $30 move that Mumbles did in Puerto Rico, and I became casino enemy #1 during the 90s. Me and a few other guys, we made millions of dollars on that. $10,000 a shot with the blackjack tables. Every weekend we would hit the strip. We would do 20 or 30 of them, $100,000, $200,000 a week. Finally, there was so much heat in Las Vegas on me, because they knew it was me, and there was so much heat on this that it drove me to stop and then come up. And Ted Whiting was very familiar with this. And that's what made me invent the Savannah move, which I'm going to show you later. So anyway, so then what happened
Can I ask
is,
a question?
sure.
When you're looking at a table, do you look for a real busy table?
Depends.
When there's a lot going on, you know, where...
A lot of people think that you need a bad dealer or you need a lot of distractions.
Yeah.
But when you get to the really professional element of it, there were actually moves where it would just be me and the dealer, nobody else at the table. It depends on the move, the situation, but basically, for some moves, it's better to have a lot of people on the table, and in other moves, it doesn't matter. And as far as who the dealer is, most people think you need a dealer that's weak and doesn't pay attention to the job. But in our case, I always prefer they're best dealers because they don't panic. You know, they don't cause problems. You either beat them or you don't.
Yeah, they pay, yeah.
So, okay. Mumbles realized he was onto something. Okay, so he was known as a mechanic. A mechanic, casino cheating has colorful names also for participants. When you think of the word mechanic, you might be thinking, what profession besides somebody who fixes cars or boats or engines, motor, any kind of motor, is also called a mechanic, obviously. But in criminality, what has the word mechanic been used for? There was a famous movie, most of you probably remember Charles Bronson. Charles Bronson did a very famous movie called The Mechanic, and there was a remake of it. What was his profession as a mechanic?
Hitman.
A hitman. He was a killer. Okay, but in the casino cheating business, we're not killing people. We're just killing casinos. Okay, so he became known as the mechanic, the first professional pass-posting mechanic, the person who manipulates casino chips in various ways to turn losing bets into winners or winners into bigger winners. So he figured he needed somebody else to expand his operation. We're still in the 50s in Puerto Rico. He contacted his old World War I buddy, who was called Wheels, and told him what he stumbled on, and together they created the first two-man pass-posting operation. And then Mumbles died, believe it or not, in a Binion's Horseshoe hotel room. Proper place to go, right? Okay, so now Wheels like Mumbles was born around 1895, and he also had a reason for being called Wheels. After taking shrapnel in the back at Verdun, after which he was confined to a wheelchair, his fellow soldiers were fascinated by how fast he was able to move around in the chair, thus the moniker Fit. Okay, so you can imagine. I mean, you you can imagine, and if you see people in wheelchairs in casinos today, or in those motorized equipment that they get around pretty fast. And Wheels got around very fast, and the name was great. So he became the first claimer in the pass posting business. The person who takes the payoffs off the table from the mechanic's pass posts. So thus was born the first modern, we'll call it modern because it's still the modern age, right? When we speak about humanity in the modern age, we're going back already a few thousand years, correct? So we'll call it modern. They formed the first professional casino cheating team. And to this day, virtually all cheats and all advantage players, have you all heard of the term advantage player? Okay, all cheats and advantage players basically work in teams. So, what did they do together? And we're still in Puerto Rico. Okay. They worked mainly roulette tables with Mumbles. Mumbles and Wheels worked together with the roulette, and Mumbles was the mechanic, and Wheels was the claimer. So, what they did is, I do not have a dolly here. This is going to represent a dolly, the little thing that they put on the winning number in roulette, right? And by the way, sir, you are? Chuck. Chuck. You're familiar with roulette tables?
Check your hand first.
You're getting the next one.
What happened to my ruler?
Most people think that casino cheaters are magicians and very sleight of hand and all that, and they're capable of, pulling something over. I don't know the first thing about magic. Never learned it. I couldn't even do the simplest card trick, okay? Because professional casino cheating has nothing to do with sleight of hand and magic. It's all bullshit. People that say that, he's a magician, he did that, nothing to do with it. It's all about timing. I could teach any of you, and I'm considered one of the best, if not the best, professional casino cheat ever. Don't take it from me, take it from Ted White. Okay? There's not one move that I've done in my life that I couldn't teach any one of you to do it in 5 minutes. The moves are simple. A 4-year-old baby, I could teach how to do the moves. All you have to do is know how to pick up a chip and put it down. That's the expanse of my physical talent in casinos, because it's all mental. It's all psychology. There's lots and lots of elements involved. But I don't want to make this. I can't make this a session about the psychology of cheating. Now, what they did is they would pass post using roulette chips that are non-redeemable. Like when you play roulette, those chips have to be cashed out at the table before you go to the cage, right? With the casino chips. So they would, let's say, with a $1 roulette chip, they would pass post. The dealer would come by, right? And what did I just do with the? I put it in my pocket. I'm so used to putting.
I got it.
See that trick? Okay, so what they would do is, let's say the number 29 came in, right? And there was a bunch of chips on there, right? The first thing the dealer does, right, is mark the winning number by putting the dolly on top of it. And by the way, sir, since you know a lot already, hey, didn't I just hear that before? Hey, have you ever played roulette?
Yes.
Okay, and you know about the dolly. Doesn't look like this,
Pretty
but
much, that.
The dollar was invented in 1955 or 56. Take a guess where it was invented based on this presentation so far.
Puerto Rico.
In Puerto Rico. It's invented in Puerto Rico by a pit boss named Luis Vargas. Okay? I have no moniker for him. He just invented it. What do you think this is for? What is the dollar? Why was it invented?
So nobody could add chips to the stack already there.
Exactly. Now, most people think, because I gave you, Ed, I gave you a presentation leading for that correct answer, leading to you saying that correct answer, right? Almost everybody, including Ted White, don't tell Ted I said this. Almost everybody, including Ted Whiting, believes that this was meant simply for marking the winning number. Because that's what you see time in and time out for trillions of times all over the world. Every time a winning comes in, a number comes in, first thing they do is mark the number. Now, did you know that if we turn the clock back to 1960 or so in Las Vegas, there were no dollars. There were no dollars. The dealer would just call a winning number and say 23 red, and then proceed to mark it and sweep off the losers. Very few people know that. And that's history. There was no marker. Now today, okay, the French roulette wheels, they don't, they have a fancy game, they don't use the markers, but markers started to appear in Las Vegas, probably around 1960, and it was there to prevent. Its real use was to prevent cheating, but even the people working in the casinos didn't know that. They just got the markers and they were told, okay, when the number wins, you just mark it. But they had no idea what it was for. Now, so they put the marker down there, right? So that would make it so they thought very difficult, if not impossible, for anybody to manipulate the chips underneath the marker after the dealer put it down, right? How many of you think that worked? That worked out well for the casinos? No. It took the person who trained me, a guy who's still alive, by the way, because he's 20 years older than I am. He's in his late 80s now. And we still tell war stories all the time about what we did in the casinos. It's every time we talk about it, it gets funnier and funnier, right? But how long do you think it took? I wasn't around when this happened. I was barely born at the time that this happened. But how long do you think it took Joe Hassan and his team to realize that not only was the dolly not going to stop them, it was actually going to help them? How long do you think it took them to realize that?
6 months.
6 minutes. Because, sure, you can't pick this up and do that. You can't do that, right? But what you can do is, well, okay, they put a dolly on top, so we'll just put we'll just get all these chips in the same color, right? And we'll stick a $25 chip or a $100 chip. Well, back then it would have been a $25 chip. We'll just stick a $25 chip in there, in the pack, and when the dealer sweeps the layout and gives that split second that we need to do a move, we'll just move the whole thing. Right? How long did that take? Split second, right? Right? Just very simple. Just go like this. Oh, this isn't a real dollar, right? Just very simple. It's over. Now, when I do seminars, I train casinos, on the surveillance staffs and the table game staffs about all these kind of moves. And I say, okay, what's your name?
Connie.
Connie? Connie. Did you see what I just did? Would you like to try it yourself? Oh my God. Come on, Connie.
Oh, I'm not that talented. I am in big trouble.
Now, all I want you to do, right, is take these chips like this, nudge it over to that side, and then put that right back on that. Okay?
I'm sweating.
By the way, this wasn't scripted, I just decided to do this. I do this in my seminars, but I never thought I would do it here. Okay, so ready? Okay, so let's see what you can do. 1, 2, 3, go.
Oops.
All right, not bad.
Sloppy.
No, not thank you very much, not bad, but, I mean, if I work with Connie for 2 or 3 minutes,
Yes.
she'll be doing this in 30 seconds.
Legal training.
Yeah, sorry.
But don't they usually, when they put the marker on top of the winning number, isn't that the first place when they start to sweep all the chips away that they go to?
No, it's the last. Usually it's the last.
Really?
Yeah. And don't forget, this happens on the first sweep. They put the chips, they put the marker on the number, right?
Yeah.
And then the first thing they do is sweep. In some casinos, not many, in some casinos, a lot of them who have been trained by me, what they do is as soon as they put the marker down, before they do anything else, they pick it up and they look and see what's there. And then they put it back. And then they sweep. But that very rarely happens. The standard procedure has always been put the marker down and sweep. And once the dealer sweeps and turns their head for a split second, because we make them we make them turn their head for a split second. It's by the way we bet and everything, we make them turn. For instance, I don't want to get too much into designing roulette moves and stuff, but we create a situation where the dealer has to turn his or her head for 0.3 of a second. Or maybe 0.3 to half a second, and that's all we need. That move takes a half a second to do. So, the answer to your question is just no.
Do you pick a particular area on the board that you do it more on the back end, the higher numbers versus the front?
I can tell that you're not an experienced roulette player, is that correct?
I don't play much, no.
Because you said board.
Table?
It's a layout, right?
Yes.
That's good. The answer to your question is yes and no, depending on the game and the situation. Like the dealer's up here, right? So you would think that we would have to do the cheating as far away from the dealer as possible. But in certain situations, it's better to just go right in and cheat under the dealer's nose, because casinos are trained that watch the bottom of the wheel. So when you're a good cheating team, they're trained to watch the bottom of the wheel. You get the move in on the top of the wheel, they're just going to automatically pay, thinking it's impossible. Okay, so let me. I don't want to get too carried away with the technical stuff of casinos again. Oh, sorry.
If two people bet on the winning number, can you still do that?
Absolutely. Well, we borrow their chips. Okay, and we've even gotten people who were like helping us unwittingly. But that's next time. Tell Ted that you want a casino cheating seminar. Because I can't do it now. So, oh, by the way, at the outset, Jim, when he introduced me, he talked about some books I wrote, Dirty Poker and American Roulette. He left out 3 or 4 more, but anyway. American Roulette is my autobiography, and it explains all this stuff. It shows you what we did, how we did it, and it's called American Roulette. If you're interested, you could get it on Amazon or any online bookseller. So, this is what they did. You had 2 older guys, okay, one who couldn't speak, and the other was in a wheelchair. About the last duo you would expect to be, you would think would be suspected of casino cheating, right? And of course that's true. So what they just took advantage of it, and Mumbles would be the mechanic, and he would switch the chips, right? Because Mumble, the reason, I forgot, I left one very important thing out. The reason the main reason why Mumbles needed somebody else, he needed somebody else to claim because he had no voice. He needed somebody to say, hey, you paid me wrong, or hey, he had no voice and he refused to, use the box. So he basically needed somebody who could talk. And that's how all this started. So Mumbles would switch the chips, and Wheels would reel up to the table in his wheelchair and claim. And they, like I said, I can't get into, you would appreciate this a lot more if you knew the actual moves they were doing, but I can't get into that. But they just terrorized the casinos in Puerto Rico, and then they went to Las Vegas and Reno, and they worked in those casinos for the last years of their lives. And then, believe this or not, Wheels also died in a hotel room where? In Vinny. Okay, so see, most of this, what I'm talking about with Mumbles and Wheels, and by the way, somebody would want, what time is it? I don't want to go over. 8:40. Okay. Oh, the next class is at 10. All right, so I won't drag this on too long, but okay, the next class is at 10. Okay, so they both died in that hotel room, and it's like I was saying. Most of what I'm recounting now about Mumbles and Wheels was told to me. I wasn't around, but I don't have pictures of them or anything, but this is all 100% accurate because the people that told me the story, I was with for 25 years. And, and they told me all this. They told me all this when they were teaching me how to cheat. And the story of how I actually got involved in cheating and everything and how that happened, that's another thing. But basically, all these people that we're going through lead to me because I'm the last of the coyotes, so to speak. Okay, so we go on. Okay, now, Joe Hassan, he was my mentor. Born in New York City in 1930. Introduced to gambling and hustling by his degenerate uncle Stanley, who may have been the only person in New York City history arrested for stealing his own book. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is exactly what I said. He wrote a book. He wrote a book. I believe it had something. It's a very smart family with finances and stuff. How they got into casino cheating, it's another story. But he wrote a book about finances, and he got caught in a Barnes and Noble bookstore in New York stealing a book. And when he got caught, he was saying, "You can't arrest me, it's my book." It's a true story. It's my book, and it was his book. And that story became a legend in a certain crowd of New Yorkers in the 50s and the 60s. So that's like I said, these people are colorful people. So as Joe Hassan, now I'm talking about his uncle Stanley, not him who got caught stealing his own book. Okay, so Joe Hassan hustled New York City streets as a teen looking for poker and craps games where he could fleece unwitting gamblers. Now, he met Mumbles at Aqueduct Racetrack in 1955. And because Wheels died a bit before Mumbles, so Mumbles needed somebody else, so Mumbles went back to New York. And by the way, the reason he moved to Puerto Rico, Mumbles, is after he had the problem with his throat and everything, his doctors told him it would be better, because he was in New York, it would be better for him to live in a tropical climate. And that's why he moved to Puerto Rico. So he happened to be back in New York, and he met Joe Hassan, and Mumbles recruited Joe Hassan to replace Wheels as the claimer, and together they perfected the mechanic and cheat operation, which then grew to a four-man operation. When I got involved in this, it was a four-man operation. And the moves got better, the psychology you know, how do you bet, how do you pass post, you know, going to today's standards? How do you pass post $200 straight up on a number that would pay $7,000 in the casinos that have high limits? You bet $200 after the number has already come in, right? And pays $7,000. How do you get that paid? Like I said, the move is simple, right? Connie proved that, right? It's simple, but how do you really get it paid? You just can't pop it in there and somebody starts going, yes, that's my bet, right? It's a whole psychological setup process where we set the casinos up. In other words, the person claiming the $7,000 that was pass posted, right, had already been at the table before making $200 bets legitimately. Okay, so when it comes time, the move goes in, and it comes time to claim it, right? The casino's already saw him before, already seen him before, right? It's already done. It's been set up. So, you know, like a lot of you, like when you walk out of here, you're going to be, you know, you say, that guy's full of shit. You know, come on, really, he did it. You know, but read the book, and you if you want, or you know, you can go online. You can go to my website. My website is called Richard at globaltablegamesprotection.com, or you could just type in my name, Richard Marcus, right? And you could read about a lot of this stuff. Okay, it became an art. Casino cheating became an art where every person, like a military operation, you know, when they went and they killed bin Laden, right? Every person on that SEAL team had to perform a specific function correctly. Like, and if one of them screws up, it falls out. It falls down like dominoes, right? It fails. And that's how high-level professional casino cheating works. There's stages, there's setups, there's stages, there's what you have to do after you've done the move and gotten paid. It's not just simple like, okay, you switch the chips and you go, oh, okay, wow, it doesn't work. You know, it doesn't work that way. But anyway, with Joe Hassan and when Momos and Joe Hassan together, they perfected the move. They started to develop psychology, and it became a much more enhanced operation. Okay, so we move on. Okay, so as I said, they began to introduce psychology and setups into their roulette pass posts at craps tables. He also showed, Joe showed Mumbles how to increase their take by pass posting odds bets and pass line bets as well. So you know in craps there's the odds bet behind, right? So the deal, if a bet looked like this, let's say $20 on the line and $20 behind it, right? And the dealer would, let's say a 4 or a 10 came out, it pays 2 to 1, the dealer would pay like this, right? So then they would actually pass post, complete, switching all the chips out. They would actually pass post two new bets. Okay, whereas so the payoff would look like that. I can't do it for the sign, but what if they would actually take that out, put these in, and say to the dealer, it would be another person. The person who switched the chips would then leave, and then another person who wasn't even betting, was standing behind, would jump in and tell the dealer that I have $500 chips underneath there, or $1,000 chips underneath there, whatever they were. And there's a psychological process involved where when the claimant would claim that the claimant would touch the dealer's hand like this, and that would shock the dealer, because dealers never get touched in mid-pay. They never ever get touched in mid-pay. When you touch a dealer's hand, if you're playing blackjack, and what is your name? Ann. Have you ever played blackjack? Did you ever, when a dealer pays the bets, let's say the dealer busts and pays all the people at the table, have you ever seen a person go out and touch the dealer?
No.
Never happens. If that, like I always say at my seminars, when I'm training people, I always say to the dealers, if anybody ever touches your finger, for any reason, and they're either absolutely drunk, or they're a casino cheat, or both. Okay? Dealers never get touched. So by touching the dealer's hand, that psychologically manipulates them, and they don't even, when you touch a dealer's hand in mid-pay, and right after that, you ask the dealer, what's your name? You think the dealer could tell you what her name is, his or her name is? No. The shock is so complete and total that when you touch somebody's hand like that, it's a robotical function dealing. Same thing over and over and over and over again. You touch the dealer's hand, it never happened before, the dealer goes into shock for a full second. Dealer, forget about where she's working, what game she's dealing, he or her is dealing, couldn't even tell you their name for a full second. That's how total the shock is. And that's what we use to enhance the operation. Okay, so so they began to introduce psychology, and they expanded the moves by doing things that people in the business would think was impossible. Like speaking about that craps move I just spoke about, where the mechanic would actually do two chip switches, the original pass line bet, and then the odds behind it. I remember one time in Atlantic City, New Jersey, when they first opened up, we were doing that with $500 chips, and the box man, after the claimer, jumped into the table and said, "Hey, you paid me wrong. I'm betting $500 chips on both the pass line and the odds." And the box man, who had experience, came from Vegas, and the dealer, they looked at each other, and the box man, and then the box man said to the dealer, "It wasn't a move. It was too fast." Box man said that to the dealer. It wasn't a move. It was too fast. Yeah. I mean, I could spend all day telling you incredible stories that you would never believe about what's happened. So,
Quick question, you think they went to the oversized chips
yes,
on the $1,000 to eliminate?
yes. Your name, sir?
Albert.
Albert?
Albert.
Yes. That's certainly part of the reason. The other reason is prestige. They just look better, but that's certainly part of the reason. And we even overcame that by using two chips to cover the one chip. We even overcame that, but it does reduce casino cheating. That kind of casino cheating, it reduces it by a lot.
Or at least down to the next level chip.
Yeah, only the top cheats can get around that. Yes.
Richard, can you show us how quick that move could be? Because I read your book and I loved it. When I read the book, I was thinking, how the hell can that move work? How quick can it
Michael,
go?
Mike, I'm going to disappoint you because it's not even about quickness. It doesn't even matter. Because what was the magic word that I said? It's about what?
Psychology.
No, the physicality. Timing. Right? And by the way, when I first started, I was thinking, when I first started doing this, I was thinking like you, and I almost got in trouble. I thought I had to be super quick. So the first time I tried to do a move, I went like this, and I banged the table so hard. I banged the table so hard, right? And this was in Aruba, right? And the casino, right out the back door is the beach, right? And I was nervous, and Joe Haskins said, "Just calm down, be cool." I said, "Don't worry, I'm calm, I'm cool." Right? Time comes, right? I get my split second, and I go, and it goes. And guess what was in my hand when the dealer snapped back? The dolly was in my hand, right? The chips were sitting there, right? The dealer was, and I already had the dog was in my hand, and the dealer looks around, right? And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I really wanted to just walk out the door into the ocean and try to walk to Europe. Right? So amazingly, the dealer didn't notice it, and I was able to put it back down. That was the first time that's in my book. That story's in my book. Now, so To answer your question, Mike, what is the difference in time of, or if I just go, I'm right out here, right? Wait, let's do that. 1, 2, 3, go. How long did that take?
Second.
Less. So how much faster could you be? It's just about, because the key is, I'm already this close to it. If I'm sitting at the table over here, you know, it'd be a little harder for me to do it on number 10 if I'm sitting, you know, over here. But if I'm already this close to it, right, my hands are starting to go slowly, right, slowly, and then now I get that turn, and it's just, so there's no speed. It's all time.
Just time it when the dealer's.
Just time, just time. So there's no magic. Have you guys ever heard of the full shuffle scam? The full shuffle, baccarat scam where they full shuffle it, right? People think that that's sleight of hand. That's also not sleight of hand. It's just keeping a certain amount of cards unshuffled when going through the shuffle process. Okay, so. Okay, now we're going to come to the, after Momo's death, Joe came up with the first laying claim blackjack pass post, where it was just like I was explaining on a blackjack table. You bet a certain amount of money, and then after the deal was paid, you switch it in, and you say, hey, you claim you won, and you have backup chips hidden that are exposed at the time you claimed. But that only needed one person for that. You didn't need 2 people for that. Okay? And the next person, one thing is, I don't want to mention anybody's name besides Joe here, but this is really interesting. At the peak of his career, one legendary Las Vegas casino owner made Joe an offer he couldn't refuse. Now, if you want to talk about casino history, an offer he couldn't refuse. Now, when you hear that offer, I made him an offer he couldn't refuse. What movie do you think about?
Godfather.
Godfather. And what did that offer indicate? It was a threat, right? Like if you don't do this, I'll kill you. You live in the desert, right? You end up in the desert. Now, that same offer coming from a Las Vegas casino owner, he said that to Joe, I'm going to give you an offer. He made an offer that Joe couldn't refuse. So you think that offer was some kind of threat, like stay out of my casinos or you're going to end up in the desert, right? Wrong. The offer was, he had Joe grabbed up, he was recognizing the casino, he had him grabbed up, taken to the back room, and security held him there. Then the owner walked into the back room and said to Joe, I'm going to make you an offer. He said, anytime you get broke and you need $1,000, you just come to this casino. Tell them you want to speak to, go to the cage, tell them you want to speak to me, and I'll give you $1,000. It was the classiest thing that ever happened. I wasn't around when this happened. It was the classiest thing I ever heard about a casino owner. He said, just leave my casinos alone. Anytime you go broke, you come into my casino and I'll give you $1,000. How many times do you think Joe went and asked for the $1,000? Never. Did he ever go into that casino again? Never. Because he respected it. And I never went, and I never cheated that casino either. I was told by Joe, leave them alone because the guy had too much class. Leave him alone. So we left that casino alone. It's the only major casino, probably in the world, that I never cheated. At the time. You know, now there's a lot more casinos. Never cheated that casino because of that. So, now it's not hard to believe that the next person joining the team might have been Joe Hassan's, I'm going wrong. Okay, might have been
another person with the same name, Hassan. Ike Hassan, his younger brother, was also introduced to the gambling world by his degenerate uncle Stanley. Now, he was first exposed to cheating and gambling during his time in the Korean War as a victim. As a victim, not a cheater. He was a victim during rest and relaxation poker games. Many of his buddies were cheated by a corporal who was dealing seconds. And that's how he got involved. That's how his first exposure to cheating. And it also was looks like I'm going too long here.
Yeah, the floor opens at 9 o'clock,
Oh,
so
okay.
they're leaving that because
What time is it?
it's 9:01.
All right, I'm gonna wrap this up. Okay. My introduction into casino cheating was also by that. When I was a kid flipping baseball cards, I caught people cheating me. My 8, 9-year-old friends cheating me. That was my first introduction to cheating, right? And that made me want to cheat back, and that's actually how it all started. Okay, so Ike was reluctant to get involved, but he was convinced, so he did it. Okay, they teamed up and they made trips to Puerto Rico and Las Vegas, and that's when they invented the dolly, and it didn't work. And a funny story is that Ike met a saucy Lido dancer named Ruthie at the Stardust Hotel in Vegas, who joined the pass posting team as their main claimer, becoming the first known official female cheat. And the women were even better than the men. Even better than the men, okay? And one night, here's another historical lore. One night, Ruthie was claiming a move in Vegas, right? And she was dancing around, and she was singing, dancing, and having a good time. And guess what? There was a Hollywood producer at the table who noticed her and saw the whole thing go down. Knew it was a move, saw it, and he then invited her for a screen test. She is still alive. All of you have heard of her name. I cannot mention it now. But she is still alive, and she's very well known. She was a dancer in Vegas for a time, and she is so we even have famous people doing this, okay? And by the way, she ended up divorcing Ike. Okay, so. Okay, here we go. The marriage ended when a film producer who happened to be sitting at the table, that's that story, okay? Okay, then Ike and Joe split up, and then Ike ran his own operation, which is, when I joined the operation, it was mainly with Ike. He was the main guy, and he retired in 1989, and then I took over that team. Okay. Okay, now, the fourth member, the last new member is me. And I've already spoken enough about myself. I became a cheater while I was a dealer at downtown Las Vegas Casino in 1977. And I did a fall shuffle scam. And that's how my career started. And then after that, I joined Ike and Joe's team. After I retired in 1989, I took over the team and ran it till 2000 when I retired, the year 2000 when I retired. Okay. Okay. Now, then in 1994, oh, and I should say that I was very involved in the designing of more types of casino cheating moves that we used against the casinos in the 80s and 90s. I designed a lot of them. And then finally in 1994, I met up, after Joe retired, I met up with a guy named Pat Mallory. And that's when we really took it to a high level. We started only working with $5,000 chips. Every move we did it's like a casino betting minimum. Like you see the minimum is $5 or $25. Our cheat move minimum was now $5,000.
Okay, this is what really blew the roof off Las Vegas. I mean, they really wanted to get us. Ted Whiting could talk to this. And then finally, in 1995, and I'm going to finish the presentation with this. In 1995, we developed the famed Savannah roulette pinching move, called the best casino cheating move ever by many experts in the history. Now, remember that before I show you this move, none of this would have ever been possible without Mumbles stumbling onto that little mistake a dealer made in Puerto Rico in the mid-50s. So, this move needs no psychology. Stumbled on by me by accident. And all I need is, first I'm going to show you a quick video of the move, 2 minutes, and then I'm going to show it to you the way it actually happens. So let's do that. Okay, this was made for a TV show that I did a few years back. Well, a lot of years back, so I look a lot better at the video. Can I do that?
Richard Marcus's signature move is this cheat called the Savannah, named after a stripper.
That move, as simple as it was the biggest money-making cheat move in the history of legalized gaming and will never be surpassed.
Here's how it works. He puts a red $5 chip on top of a purple $5,000 chip, with the $5 chip slightly overlapping, so the dealer can't see the $5,000 chip below.
I want the dealer to think that it's this bet, that it's 2 $5 chips. If the bet loses, my partner at the wheel, he'll yell, "Damn it." That is my signal that I have to remove the $5,005 off the layout before the dealer can pick it up. Had the dealer seen the action, the dealer's going to yell, "Hey sir, put that down. You can't pick up your chips like that. The bet lost." And I go, "Oh, I'm sorry." I have a drink in my hand. I go into drunk routine. "Oh, I'm sorry. I can't believe I did that." And I put back $10. And the key is that there's no problem because the dealer thought that this $10 was the original bet because the dealer never saw the $5,000 chip underneath.
He says the move is brilliant because he's cheating when he loses, not when he wins. When the roulette wheel favors him, he lets the $5,000 chip covered by the $5 chip stand.
And I immediately go, "Yes, I won, there it is!" And I point that. There it is, a $5,000 bet on the column, 2-1, that pays 10 grand. And I carry on. Now the dealer thinks there's $10 here. The dealer takes me for some kind of idiot. The dealer now comes down and removes it, and wow, it's there. And the dealer sees it.
He says the cheat is near perfect because, from the vantage point of the overhead security cameras, everything looks legit.
All they see is this. I made a legitimate bet. I made that bet. And they have to pay because their camera tells them that I made that bet. I did make that bet. It was a legitimate bet. Okay, so that, believe it or not, that move was so simple, right? So simple. All I did was I went to all of the top casinos that had minimum bets like $10 and the maximum $10,000. Right? All I did was I would take a $5,000 chip and Albert. Like this at that time, nobody had the bigger chips. They were all the same size. The 5,000s were the same size as the $5 chips, right? So I would just put the bet on the layout like this. You notice the $5,000 chip is a little bit behind. It's like jutting out like a shark's mouth, right?
It's good.
And the reason was, all I wanted to do is hide the chip from the dealer. So I put the chip down, it was always on the columns and sometimes on the third section, and always on the outside, right? So I'm standing here like this. Now from this box, from where the dealer is, the dealer's aware there's two chips there, but naturally assumes the second one, they're both $5 chips, right? In hundreds of times, never once, and I was always ready if the dealer would see that $5,000 chip beforehand, I would take it off and say, oh, I didn't mean to bet that, and just nothing. Never once, in hundreds of times, not once did a dealer ever see that chip, including when I was the only bet on the table. Only me and the dealer, and I put down $5,005 on that box, a 2-to-1 box, and the dealer just looks at it and assumes it's $10. I actually did the move with me and just the dealer, because somebody asked me before, you need a lot of people at the table. Me and the dealer, never once. So, Pat,
I never questioned why you put a $5 chip on top of a $5,000 chip.
a few times they did, and I said, oh, that's for the dealer. I meant that as a toll for the dealer. And they said, no, sir, you got to do it like this. You got to put it to the side. But very rarely, because the fact is, they didn't have to ask any questions. They just went to surveillance to verify that it was there. Right now, Pat's up by the wheel, right? So Pat has the view, right? He's watching the game from up top here, right? I'm concentrating on the chip. If the chip loses, if the bet loses, because we're only going to win this bet a little less than 1 out of 3 times, right? Because you got the 0, the double 0, now triple 0, right? And you can only win on these 12 numbers, right? So if the bet loses, all I do is, I have a drink next to me on the table. All I do is very simply, I just go out and pick it right up. Now you would think that the dealer would catch that. It's a flagrant violation. I made a bet, I'm picking it up, right? We thought the dealer would see it every time, catch me every time, right? But it was only 1 in 5 times. 20% of the times the dealer called me. If the dealer didn't catch me, it's all over. That's it. I mean, you know, we don't try it again on the table, but it's all over, right? If the dealer catches me, she says, sir, put that back, right?
I'm sorry.
So, your name, sir?
Keith.
Steve?
Keith.
Keith.
Yeah.
Keith. So the dealer says to me, put that back. Now I have $5,005 there. So put that back, you got lost. So what I'm gonna put back the $5,005, right?
No.
What am I gonna put back?
$10.
There it is. Because the 5,000 is palmed in my hand, right? Right? Just to sum up that move, which Ted Whiting knows very well, to sum up that move, there was a major investigation because every time that the bet lost, when the crime was committed, they don't call surveillance because it's only about $10. And when I got caught, I would not only put back the $10, but I go into a drunk routine. I go, what? Put that back! What? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know the ball dropped. I'm sorry. Then I put $10 out. I acted like a drunk. So no one's calling surveillance because some drunk tried to pick up his $10 bet. The dealer thought it was $10 there. I picked it up. She yelled at me. I put it back. Now the pit boss, because dealers, they don't react nice when that's a flagrant violation. Especially the women dealers. When I got caught, the women dealers would go, ah! Right? like crying rape, right? And they don't, that's a violation. It's like a rape, really. I mean, you're raping their game, right? So I would just go into my drunk routine, and now the pit boss comes over, and what's your name, sir? Mike. Mike comes over and he says,
what happened, hey, and I'm still acting, hey, Mike, how you doing? You and me, we're gonna do some drinking there, right? And then the dealer's telling, yeah, he had $10 there, he picked it up. Is there any reason for Mike to call surveillance over $10? No. So surveillance only got called when it won. Because when a $5,000 bet shows up that nobody called out to the dealer, that is heat. That's heat. They immediately think it's cheating. Because the dealer, why did the pit boss would say to the dealer, why didn't you call that out? I didn't see it. That generates a lot of heat. First thing they do, and everybody had 24/7 coverage on every game at that point, right? So, okay, no problem. They go, they pick up the phone, they call surveillance. Yeah, roulette table number 4. There's a $5,000 chip sitting on a 2-to-1 first column bet. Can you just verify that? Oh yeah, no problem, legitimate bet. Not only was it a legitimate bet, but I bet it early. As soon as it was the first bet on the table, right? Flawless, right? And it was so good that the $10,000 payoff wasn't enough for us. We started doing it on 2 bets. On 2 bets. So now the same bet. $5,005 on the column pays 2-to-1, 5,000 on the third dozen pays 2-to-1, right? So if one wins and one loses, if the winning number, let's say, is down here, 29, the third dozen would win, but the third column would lose. But I don't have to do anything. So I get paid 10,000 here and lose 5,000 here. So I get paid 5,000. If they both win, I get paid 20,000. If they both lose, how much do they get?
Nothing.
Nothing.
$10.
The most they could get is 20 bucks.
20 bucks.
The most they could get, 20% of the time they get 20 bucks. 100% of the time we get 10 or 20,000, right? And you think, how much harder is it to pick up 1 to pick up 2? It takes virtually the same time. Okay, so to make that story short, we did this in Vegas every Friday and Saturday night and Saturday and Sunday day shift. We did this 6 or 7 months straight. Huge amount of money coming off the tables. They knew it was me because every time we won, every time the bet won, while they're doing their surveillance review, they're saying, okay, yeah, who's the guy? And it's always me or Pat. Oh yeah, we know him. That's Richard Marcus. He's never made a legitimate bet in his life, right? And now surveillance is helping me. Surveillance is Ted, and Ted Whiting's my ally now. He's helping me because all he's doing is telling the truth, right? We ran the tape. He made the bet, and then there was at the time there was a place, detective agency called the Griffin Investigations. They're still around, but they no longer do this type of work. And their job was to protect the casinos against people like me. And their main field agent knew who I was, and he was up there in the surveillance room. I didn't even know this was happening. I got told these stories by Ted Whiting and other people who were chasing me all these years when I started to work for the casinos, right? And so the Griffin guy was telling you can't pay that bet. What do you mean? He made a legitimate bet. The bet's not legitimate. And they would show him the video of me making the bet legitimately. I don't care what your video says. That's Richard Marcus. He would not bet a penny legitimately. Now you're trying to tell me he bet $5,000 legitimately? It's on video. But he was right. He was right. They never figured it out. Because the thing is, we never did more than one, win or lose, we never did more than one in the same casino on the same shift. Because a smart guy like Ted Whiting could say, okay, he made a legitimate bet. Do we have any other video footage of him around here during the last 3 or 4 hours? So if we had been at another table, and then they had video of me picking it up, they would have married it. The win to the loss, they would have figured out exactly what we were doing. Not only did they never figure out what we were doing, they had probably one of the biggest investigations, it's not the biggest investigation in the history of the Nevada Gaming Control Board Enforcement Division was trying to figure out what we were doing, what I was doing. They didn't even know who the other guy was. what we were doing, right? I had 24/7 hour surveillance on me, right? I mean, I would, how many of you guys have seen the movie Casino? Do you remember the scene where De Niro and Pesci, they're in the diner in New York, and the FBI car is in the parking lot, and then Pesci, De Niro gets out of the car, right, and he knocks on the FBI guy's window, and he says, "Come on, fuckos, let's go for a drive." He said the word "fucko," which I love. He said, "Come on, fuckos, let's go for a drive." It was the same thing with me. I was being followed around 6 months by, I don't know who was following, probably was FBI, it was probably a lot more than just undercover control board agents, right? So one day, I was at a stop sign, I see them behind me, I get out of my car, and this actually happened after that movie, so it was in my mind. So I didn't call them fuckos, I knocked on the, I didn't knock on the window, the window was already open. And I said, listen, I'll make it easier for you guys. I'm going to Smith's Food King. I'm in jail. That's the kind of attitude I had. I mean, I was like, not scared of anybody and this and that. So I was nice about it. I wasn't disrespectful. I said, I'm going to Vaughan, so come on, let's go. Right? And then, if you know you're being followed and you want to lose somebody, if they're not following you by air, nobody can follow you. If you know anything about police surveillance, nobody can follow you if you don't want to be followed, unless they're doing it by air. So I would just lose them when I wanted to, and then we go right to the casino while they're still looking for us somewhere. Because the beauty about this move, it's in and out. It takes 5 seconds. I only can make one bet in one casino. I either lose it and they get nothing, or we win the 5,000, 10,000, whatever it was. So it got so. I later learned, a couple of years after I wrote the book, I later learned that they were taking roulette wheels apart in Vegas. They were taking roulette wheels apart, looking for some kind of device that I was controlling the ball, where the ball was. And this was just a simple thing. I make the bet. If I win, I leave it there. If I lose, I take it back. That's the whole move. KISS. K-I-S-S, keep it simple, stupid.
Stupid.
Right? They were looking for all kinds of stuff that I didn't know. They were looking for stuff that I couldn't even imagine existed, and they were thinking I was doing it. Go ahead.
When you did your moves, you said you did it in the second that the dealer might have been turning his head.
No, that was in another move.
But in those moves,
Right.
didn't anyone else at the table ever see you? Like,
Yes.
that's what I
Yes.
wondered. Like,
Yeah, I always get asked that question. It's a good question. This particular move, the Savannah move, almost never, because it was so subtle. It was so subtle, almost never. But in the other moves, when we were putting chips underneath the dolly, you'd be surprised. People are only interested in their own bets, so the only person that could possibly see it would be someone who had their chip on the same number.
Yeah.
Right? And maybe, and we also had our own surveillance system working, when we were a professional operation, so there was always one person on the team not sitting at the table watching, okay? And that person's job was to protect us. And we would call these rats, we would sort of that term rats, right? We had a rat protection, right? So when somebody ratted, okay, he would know it, tell us about it, but most people, they're only interested in their own thing. They're not interested in getting involved. They don't want to get involved. So I would say that the move underneath the dolly, which was the only of our moves that had that factor, that risk factor, I would say maybe 5% of the time or less, somebody saw it. Now you take that 5%, and then you say, how many of those people are going to tell the casino in front of us? It's almost zero. Now how many are going to wait till we leave and then go up to a pit boss and say, that guy, he did something right. So they don't even know what they saw, but he did something right. So it happened 3 times where somebody actually said something while we were at the game. 3 times and thousands of moves. So one particular very funny story in my book when it did happen, because it happened, the first time it happened was very early in my career, and they had people actually in the back room with us, and another back room that were talking about testifying. And this would have ended my career right before, just like in the first 6 months that I got started. And Joe was in the other back room, and he started yelling at the top of his lungs because he knew how serious the situation was, because they had a witness that was going to testify. And he started yelling, "Anybody testifies me that I'm going to come back here, I'm going to find that person." And he used some really bad language, you know, and just scared them away. They ripped up those witness statements, and then that was the end of that. But it was not much of a factor. And when it was a factor, the person who was on rat patrol, let's say you and Mike are sitting right here together, right? And let's say you see it. And now you, most likely the first person you're going to tell, let's say you're with each other, the first person you're going to tell is Mike. Say, "Man, that guy just did something, right?" So you start talking to Mike, and then our guy on rat patrol butts right in. So he'll come right up and say, "Hey, weren't you the guy that hit that big jackpot at the South Point Casino on the slot machine the other day for $300,000? That was you, right?" And you go, "What are you talking about?" And now she's thinking, "The guy, my husband won $300,000. I'm not saying that we would do anything to get your mind off it. And it worked. And if it was the other way around, or we would say, like, if it was him who starts talking to you, right, and then we come up to you, he would come up to you and say, "Oh, I like your outfit, that's really nice." Start flirting with you, and now that's going to get him in a different state of mind. All psychology, we did all that stuff to protect ourselves, and people ratting on us was almost negligible. Besides that one incident, there was never any problem with it. Okay, so I gotta let you guys go. Thanks for coming.